Eventually, Greece was taken over by the Roman Empire, but this story did not die. In fact, the infrastructure and connectedness of the Roman Empire meant that these legends would be spread to all parts of the known world, as people continued retelling these ancient stories and benefiting from living according to the ideals that they communicated. At the height of the Roman Empire, the most famous and significant historical figure of the Western world was born, a craftsman named Jesus, from a small town in the north of Judea, a particularly unruly part of the Roman Empire. What made this seemingly insignificant man so important was that he was the incarnation and the embodiment of the eternal Son of God. The very identity of God himself was glorified and alive in this man. The ultimate form of goodness, perfectly embodied. At the age of 30, Jesus began teaching a small group of friends that in order to know God, they must look to him and follow what he does. And what did Jesus do? Unlike the unruly Judean rebels who sought to defeat the invading Roman Empire in battle and revolution, Jesus did not fight, but acted compassionately, loved his enemies, included the marginalized, spoke the truth, healed the sick and fed the poor, encouraging others to do the same. These acts gained him a following that made the local authorities suspicious and nervous. And when he was eventually accused of blasphemy and insurrection, though he had done nothing wrong, he took the blame, took the punishment, and was put to death. But through all of this, he never avoided his responsibility and never stopped doing the right thing. There's much more to the story than that, but the news of Jesus, the Son of God, was spread through the Roman Empire and was lived out and embodied by his followers, known as Christians, as they went through suffering without turning away from goodness. And as this following grew, it eventually led to a Christian becoming the leader of the Roman Empire, winning over the powers that once sentenced Jesus to death. Eusebius, an ancient historian famous for his writing about the early church, tells the story of how the Christian leader Constantine defeated the tyrannical emperor Maxentius and took his place to become emperor of Rome. He begins by describing the cruelty of Emperor Maxentius. The crowning point of the tyrant's wickedness was, for magical purposes, tearing apart pregnant women, at other times searching into the bowels of newborn infants. It is impossible to describe the manifold acts of oppression by which this tyrant of Rome enslaved his subjects, so that by this time they were reduced to the most extreme penury and want of necessary food, a scarcity such as our contemporaries do not remember ever before having existed at Rome. Constantine, however, filled with compassion on account of all these miseries, began to arm himself with all warlike preparation against the tyranny. Assuming therefore the supreme God as his patron and invoking his Christ to be the preserver and aid, setting the victorious trophy, the salutary symbol, in front of his soldiers and bodyguard, he marched with his whole forces, trying to obtain again for the Romans the freedom they had inherited from their ancestors. Maxentius, trusting more in his magic arts than in the affection of his subjects, dared not even advance outside the city gates, but had guarded every place and district and city subject to his tyranny with large bodies of soldiers. Constantine, confiding in the help of God, advanced against the 1st and 2nd and 3rd divisions of the tyrant's forces, defeated them all with ease at the first assault. When, in his flight before the divinely aided forces of Constantine, Maxentius essayed across the river which lay in his way under divine direction, giving way unexpectedly before the appointed time, the bridge began to sink, and the men went bodily to the bottom, first the wretch himself, then his armed attendants and guards sank as lead in the mighty waters. Constantine entered the imperial city in triumph, and here the whole body of the Senate and others of rank and distinction in the city, freed as it were from the restraint of a prison, along with the whole Roman populace, their countenances expressive of the gladness in their hearts, received him with acclamations and abounding joy. Men, women, and children with countless multitudes of servants greeted him as deliverer, preserver, and benefactor with incessant shouts. But he, being possessed of inward piety toward God, was neither rendered arrogant by these plaudits, nor uplifted by the praises he heard, but being sensible that he had received help from God, he immediately rendered a thanksgiving to him as author of his victory.